feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together. This is big things. Doing big things. Chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real. This life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream. All the dudes yell. This is just what I do and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, but homie, keep going. You know the saying, you can reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls, I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, put me in charge. I'm a general, from the front, I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never.
Welcome back to the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank. I'm your host today, Dr. Kevin Cox, the director of the Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. And as our listeners out there know, the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank is filmed in conjunction with the FAU Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. And we come to you live every single week on Wednesdays from the Oz Digital Studio. And we talk to the brightest and best local entrepreneurs right here in South Florida. Today is a particularly exciting day. We're just coming off the Maverick reception, the 9th annual Maverick reception at the FAU Tech Runway. Really great program, great opportunity to celebrate all the startup companies that have gone through the program, some of which have really grown and flourished. So it's great to celebrate our wins out there. In other news, FAU's undergraduate entrepreneurship program recently ranked by the Princeton Review number 24 internationally. That's right, folks. We've cracked into the top 25 in terms of our undergraduate entrepreneurship offering. And we love the recognition both via the Adams Center and FAU Tech Runway. Well, let's get right into the show. We've got a first ever co-host scenario here this morning. Then we have a past guest, Jill Schwartz, the now Chief Product Officer at Organicell, was back in this studio about a year ago, fulfilling a different role, and she's back to co-host with me. Jill, welcome back. What's going on?
Thanks, Kevin. Oh, it's kind of exciting to be here. Ironic that it's a full year away, and so somehow the universe manifested this collaboration with Organicell. Yeah, so I was a Boca Raton innovator, right, or entrepreneur, and the medical training and distribution company that I had sort of merged very nicely with Organicell Regenerative Medicine. That was the space that I'm in, and so happy to be now joined with them as Organicell being a tremendous leader and innovator in the biotech world, but specifically or primarily in the regenerative medicine space. So yeah, very exciting.
Well, with that, Jill, why don't you do your co-hosting duties and introduce our exciting guest today?
Okay, I will. So we're so privileged to be here with Dr. Harry Leider. Harry is recently, like myself, I think he's been with the company now as the Chief Executive Officer for about 6 months plus, and he's has quite an impressive background. He was the Chief Medical Director or Medical Officer of Walgreens. But without further ado, I'll let him tell his accolades because they're quite impressive.
Oh, well, thank you, Jill. It's a really nice introduction, and thank you for the kind offer to be here today. And congratulations on the progress of your entrepreneurship program. It's very impressive. I have a lot of passion for entrepreneurship, and except for the big Walgreens experience, I kind of am a serial entrepreneur, so I'm delighted to be here today. Just real briefly by way of background, my mother requires me to give the background on these kinds of things.
Fair enough. Can't go wrong with mom.
But anyway, real briefly, I was trained as an internist, general internal medicine, which is an adult doctor, a diagnostician. And then I was very fortunate to be able to pursue my passion of combining leadership and medicine. After I did all my medical training and internal medicine training in med school, I got into a special fellowship program that was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And I went out to the University of Washington in Seattle for 2 years. and I was able to study public health under some of the nation's best public health experts to learn something about research, clinical research, but they also funded me to get an MBA. So the big idea was to take doctors after all their training and give them an opportunity to learn some new things and become leaders in medicine. Most of my colleagues got a public health degree and went into academia. I was the black sheep of the group who actually went into the business world. So for 25 years, I've been a serial physician executive working for a broad range of healthcare companies, both small, like Organicell, and large, like Walgreens.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's really interesting you say that. We had a couple students last night at our Maverick reception from the med school right here at FAU,
Yeah.
came to the event just in particular to track me down and say, hey, we'd like to learn about some of this entrepreneurship stuff, which they haven't necessarily invited me into the med school, but now that the students have, I think I can probably work my way in there. And I think that's a really powerful combination, right? Having not only the scientific expertise, or in some instances, computer science, engineering, technical expertise, and then layering on top of that, understanding a little bit about our free market economy and business and economics and really how things work, whether you want to start your own thing or just, I think it's beneficial to understand how the entity you work for, what's its business model, what's its revenue model, like, does this make sense for you, and really understanding those instead of just getting a paycheck with a number and being like, well, I guess that's just is what it is. I don't really understand what's going on.
Well, back when I did it, it was really rare for a physician to pursue a business background or business degree. Now it's much more common because healthcare arguably is the biggest business in the country, if not second.
Yeah.
So now many people in medicine want to learn business skills, maybe entrepreneurship, maybe MBAs, as a way to understand their environment and sometimes to transition their career from seeing patients to something more in the leadership realm.
And I think what's most interesting too, and how this sort of piggybacks, is many of the physicians that we work with are in the concierge space of medicine. So they're in the cash pay world, which is running a serious business, right? I mean, the business of medicine, where when you're in the insurance sector, it's really you're under the constraints and government of the health insurance. So
yeah, it's very unique. A few weeks ago, we had on LifeScan. Yeah, they do the digital scans to look for any anomalies, and I was surprised to hear that none of it is covered by insurance, but could be a really valuable and I mean tremendously impactful service. I mean, he told us stories about people that had unknown, really aggressive forms of cancer, but in their tiny early stages, but could still see it on imaging and were able to be addressed and would otherwise have likely not been caught. And it's all cash and revenue business, and it seems to be going well, and it's a really great service. So let's dig into it. Let's talk a little bit about Organicell regenerative medicine. What do you do? What do you offer?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. The big idea here is that as we age, cells in our body become less and less functional. And we develop diseases of aging that are so common. For example, 50% of adults develop osteoarthritis of their knee, not rheumatoid arthritis, which is more rare, the inflammatory kind, but they get bone spurs, they have injuries from perhaps earlier in their life, and they get pain. And the joint space narrows. You hear people say, well, I've got bone-on-bone arthritis. That's 50% of adults develop chronic pain in their knees just because of aging. Now, let's go to a totally different area. A lot of us, including me, lose a little hair as we get older because the hair follicles age, right? That's another type of aging. Cognitive decline. I mean, one of the most feared things in the world is Alzheimer's, right? And that's a disease of aging for many people. Changes even in your looks with wrinkles or loss of collagen in your face. That's an aging effect. So Organicell is pioneering therapies for conditions related to aging. And what we're harnessing are these little particles that are already in the body called exosomes. They're
Nice.
tiny little particles in almost every cell, little bubbles that are 1,000th the width of a human hair. 1,000th. So small, it's incredible.
Microscopic powerhouses.
Yeah, microscopic. That's right, Jill. And in these particles are 300 what we call bioactive chemicals. What does bioactive mean? They do something in the body. The technicalities are things like microRNA and RNA and DNA and cytokines. But the big idea is these tiny little particles release chemicals into the blood that reduce inflammation, and inflammation is a common pathway to create disease, and actually cause some cells to regrow, which could be cartilage in your knee, it could be your hair, it could be your skin, it could be wounds. And we're pioneering how we isolate these exosomes from the body and where they can be used in this regenerative medicine space that Jill's talking about.
All right. Well, this is pretty exciting. All right. Next, I'm going to have to ask you what's your current status here today, because I'll tell you what, if you can make it by the time, maybe you leave here, I make an appointment, whatever,
sure.
I've got to do. If we
Sure.
can make sure that after I do a heavy leg day,
Yeah.
my knees don't get sore
Yeah.
and that this doesn't get any thinner up in the front. If
Exactly.
you can solve those two things, this will be by far the best episode of the podcast
Yeah,
from my perspective ever.
So some of what we do is still in the research phase. So in medicine, it's most things that are therapies need to be approved by the FDA. You probably know that. There's over-the-counter stuff, but
there's supplements that don't do anything, and it's all nonsense.
But if it's
business,
real medicine, or in this area we call them biologics, they need to be approved by the FDA in most cases. So we actually isolate exosomes two ways. One way is from women who have this is kind of wild, who have cesarean sections, C-sections, and when they have a baby, they donate for a small fee their amniotic fluid to science. We get the fluid and we can isolate billions of these exosome particles from the amniotic fluid because it's rich in it. And the fetus, the baby produces growth factors, the mom produces growth factors. So it's this soup of these wonderful microparticles. The biologics we make from human amniotic fluid, we're researching to get FDA approval to use them for the knee or anti-aging, or to try to prevent Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever. That's one part. The other way we get exosomes is from the patient themselves. That's called autologous. Autologous means you get the therapy from your own body. So what we would do is we would take, you go to a doctor's office, they would take 50 cc's, which is a big syringe worth of blood from you. They'd send it to our lab, and we would process it in a proprietary manner where we make sure there's no viruses, no bacteria, it's very sterile. And we would do multiple things to it. But the final step is we put it in a hypercentrifuge that generates 20,000 gravities of force. So to put that in perspective, we're in one gravity here on Earth, right?
Yep.
If you go in a fighter pilot, let's see, you had a Maverick reception. So just for fun, if you were a Maverick and a fighter pilot,
all right,
you climb too rapidly. You always remember these guys almost black out.
Yeah. G-forces.
G-forces. That's about 11 or 12. This is 20,000 G-forces for 90 or more minutes. And we isolate hundreds of billions of particles, these exosomes, from the patient themselves. We send it back to the doctor, and then the doctor can use it for whatever they want, the knee, the hair, whatever. And that is a therapy we have today, because the FDA does not have to approve it because it's from your own body.
Interesting.
There's a therapy some of your listeners may have heard of today that's similar, called platelet-rich plasma, PRP. And we're like the next generation PRP. That's been around for a while. And Jill helped pioneer that field.
And that's the one that is maybe colloquially referred to as like blood spinning.
Mm-hmm. Jill can comment on that.
Exactly. And it's really very, very well known in the athletic world. Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Sure. All had PRP injections. Kim Kardashian made it famous with the vampire facial and her bloody face back in 2014. So PRP is not new on the front, of the medicine front, and it's quite an effective tool. Started back in the 80s in cardiology. It was used in surgery, dentistry for wound healing. This is, as Harry said, this is the next generation of PRP. This whole frontier, if you will, of medicine, regenerative medicine, that is, I'm speaking of, is it is the next frontier. We are pioneering this space, and and to put it into perspective, 20 years it took the phone, cellular phone era to evolve to what it is today. What we're doing in the last couple of years in the stem cell exosome space is just, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And what we're going to be able to I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say this, Harry, you can keep me honest, is really remedy, perhaps reverse disease states with these little nanoparticles.
Yeah, Jill, no, I think in some cases that's right. In some cases, we may be reducing symptoms, like if someone has bad knee arthritis, it might be reducing the pain. But in some cases, it might actually grow the cartilage back. Or if with hair or skin, we have doctors that help patients regrow their hair. Or this is being used, as Jill mentioned, in aesthetic areas. And then, believe it or not, your listeners might perk up when I say this. It's even being used in sexual medicine for both men and women as well as they get older.
Yeah. So my whole medical training company, but we taught doctors how to get into this space. That was the excitement around medicine 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They are absolutely flocking to learn more because this is real stuff. These are real solutions.
Well, and baby boomers, so I'm a baby boomer. Baby boomers, unlike the previous generations, don't want to quietly get old. They want to stay active. They want to be vibrant. They want to do athletic stuff. They want to travel. So there's a generational shift of people wanting to do things to stay active, to stay younger, whether it's physically or younger feeling or their looks. So it's a whole new world out there.
Yeah. Living longer, we are. So it's about living better in these longer years.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned FDA approval, always a big challenge, and that most of these treatments, at least currently, aren't something that would necessarily be covered by an insurance policy. So is there public funding available? Because that FDA stuff gets so expensive.
It's a great question. So to get an FDA approval is a process.
Yeah.
You start out, you may know this, but you start out doing research usually in animals because you don't want to subject humans to a therapy until you know it's safe. And then you progress to small studies called phase 1 studies with a small number of humans to make sure nothing bad happens. And then you go to larger phase 2 studies to make sure you know the dose, how much of the therapy to give, and again, prove it's safe. And then you do the big phase 3 studies, which can have hundreds, if not thousands of patients, which is what the FDA requires to get approval. Sometimes you can get grants, NIH, National Institute of Health grants and things like that. But when you're a biotech company, usually the money for these studies you're raising from investors or Wall Street, venture capital firms, that kind of thing. That's usually how you're doing it. And you raise some money, you do some research, you get a positive outcome maybe in one study, then you raise some more money at what we call a higher valuation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, some of your listeners will know all about this because this is true for all entrepreneurial businesses. You don't want to raise too much money too early because your company's not worth much.
Yeah, but absolutely it's the same model that we talk so much about on the show. We do have a lot of companies in particular that come through our accelerator that do sometimes qualify for those NIH grants, which can be really helpful. And then in our case, because we're outside of medicine so often, the National Science Foundation has great programs like SBIR, and
it's a long process. It can sometimes take years to get the grant.
Yeah, and phase 1 isn't really that much money. It's also not that hard to get, but phase 2 can be really interesting and help founders retain more equity, right? Because
100%.
That's non-dilutive capital, which is the financial term. I like my term better. Free money.
Yeah.
That's more fun. You're on the hook to deliver
But
something.
in biotech and being, in an entrepreneurial world of medicine, time is your enemy. So we want to get the first FDA approval for exosomes. We want to get to market with our new products quicker. So if raising money, even if we give up a little bit of the equity, gets us there faster versus applying for grants and waiting a year and a half to 2 years to see if we get them. And by the way, those grants are very competitive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
they're
not a slam
competitive,
dunk.
especially phase 2.
So
Phase
right now, for
1,
example,
they'll take a flyer.
we're raising money. We sort of a seed round, a friends and family round, and we're looking to raise between $5 and $7 million as we speak. We've raised some of that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I was going to say everything in the medical space is it's the same as other sectors, but it's kind of on steroids when it comes to speed, when it comes to amounts of money, when it comes to
And there's two different things, I think, that makes medicine and healthcare different. One is you're dealing with lives. So you can't fake it till you make it. You can't throw out a minimally viable product.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're always teaching these software companies, MVPs, and I'm one who always notes when I'm speaking, when I finish up that minimum viable product or making a prototype, I always query the audience and say, can anybody think of an instance when this will not work or would be completely inappropriate?
So I'm going to give you one of the biggest example in healthcare history, and I was involved with it. I have to be a little careful what I say because I have a bit of an NDA with Walgreens. But while I was at Walgreens, I was involved with the Theranos debacle.
Oh,
Drop
boy.
of blood, Elizabeth. I met Elizabeth multiple times, and Sonny, because we had a $150 million investment in Theranos before I arrived as chief medical officer.
Might have been a great investment for a company like Walgreens if it
worked,
if it did what was claimed.
Exactly, and it got a lot of PR, and they had a fabulous board with George Schultz and Henry Kissinger and James Mattis and Betsy DeVos. So it had to be right. But anyway, they had a product fraudulent that fundamentally didn't work and could have hurt people's lives. We had to invalidate $1 million laboratory tests retroactively and tell people, forget about them. They're not right. They may not be right.
Yeah.
So that's a case where some people say, well, she was in Silicon Valley. She was kind of like doing the Silicon Valley thing, like iterating, pivoting, fake it till you make it, all that kind of stuff. But in healthcare, you can't do that. Number two, and I can always talk a little more about that if you're interested. Number two, we are in a highly regulated space. This whole FDA thing, I mean, you don't have that if you're developing software, right? So
no, it's the Wild West. That's what kind of makes it exciting, even if it's a combination of the software and the service, right? You see companies like Uber just ignoring taxi laws. You see Airbnb ignoring commercial real estate laws.
You can't do that in healthcare. Again, unless it's an over-the-counter thing, you need the FDA in most cases to approve it, and there's a lot of standards as we talked about. So those two things that innovation is great in healthcare, but it's real people and it's their lives, and you can't throw out there something that doesn't work and could hurt somebody. And number two, we're very heavily regulated. Those are the two differences.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to jump into a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll come back with our segment on Hot or Not.
Look, Google is smart, but owls are wiser. Instead of spending an hour sifting through ads and clickbait BS, get the answers you need from qualified experts immediately. What is OWL? Think a best-of edition of Google, Cameo, and Clubhouse, all rolled into one app. OWL is an app where you can get advice through secure, private, live voice calls, tailored specifically to your questions, and all in real time. Need marketing or PR advice? OWL it. App or software development? OWL it. Healthcare, investing, social media, grant writing, education? OWL it. Coming soon. OWL, one-on-one with sports legends, singers, actors, celebrities, and more in real time. That's super exciting. Who? OWL. That's OWWLL. 2 W's for twice as wise. 2 L's because you'll really love it. OWL. Connect. Learn. Grow. Now available for Apple or Android. Download OWL today on the App Store on your device. Woo!
You hire someone like Jill who has
That's
to do
right.
it all.
All right, welcome back to the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank. On this segment, we like to figure out what's hot or not. Given we have a doctor in the studio today and chief executive officer, I want to ask you about physicians. Physicians, in particular, being more entrepreneurial as a business person, or more innovative. Is that hot right now, or you
Well,
see it as
So
more
the world is
traditional?
bifurcating in medicine.
Interesting.
So a lot of docs that are coming out of med school and residencies over the last 10, 15 years, unlike when I came out. When I came out, most doctors went into private practice. Now, a lot of, 50 to 60% of doctors in America work for hospitals or their practices have been bought out by private equity companies or insurance companies like United Healthcare.
Yep.
That's over 50% of doctors are no longer hanging up a shingle or have a private practice. They work for a business like a hospital system. Then there is a smaller cohort of doctors that, Jill's world has worked with, Jill has worked with over decades, that are more entrepreneurial, and they could be concierge physicians where they take a retainer in order to take you into their practice and give you more of their time and attention. They could be in this regenerative medicine and anti-aging space. A lot of psychiatrists don't take insurance. They only take cash pay. And they're
Sure.
entrepreneurs. So there is a smaller cohort, but very important cohort that are entrepreneurial. But at the same time, 60% of doctors in America work for a company and kind of just want to come in and punch the clock and see patients, not worry about the business.
And I'm going to add to that and say totally hot. So last year, a whole year ago, we talked about Tony Robbins and his group called Fountain Life, which is a cash pay concierge, very MD VIP model. And they're opening centers across the country. And these are all entrepreneur doctors.
And in that model, it's not for everybody, but they have a program for some patients or customers where they pay, and wait for this, they have a cohort group that pay $100,000 a year out of their pocket to be a Apex member and get access to every single latest and greatest technology, from blood biopsies for cancer, what we call liquid biopsies, to brain age scans, to stem cells or exosomes. They get access to, it's like concierge medicine on steroids.
Yeah.
But that's $100,000 a year.
And there's no shortage of those patients either.
No, we've had being we do what we do, having many past guests with prior exits and no shortage of capital. We've had quite a few that engage in that concierge medicine. It's pretty incredible level of service you can get,
especially here in South Florida.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, Jill, you got another hot or not question you'd like to ask the good doctor today?
Put me on the spot. Another hot or not question. Do you think the world of health insurance is going to go away?
Oh.
Hot or not? Cash pay
No,
versus insurance?
No, because although, our world is dealing with a lot of cash pay doctors, the numbers are just overwhelming. Most people can't afford a world of cash pay medicine. They do need insurance. Employers are going to continue. By the way, early in my career, I was chief medical officer of 2 health plans. Employers are going to continue, in my mind, to offer healthcare insurance as a benefit, as an inducement to keep their employees. Medicare, of course, is huge. It's, I don't see insurance going away at all. I don't see us becoming a single payer system like the UK either. I think we're going to have employer-based insurance. When it comes to our field of anti-aging and regenerative medicine, the other issue I don't see changing is health plans paying for this ever. Because the calculus of a health plan economically is a business thing. If they pay $1,000 or $10,000 for a therapy, they would like to know that over the next 3 years they're going to get a return on investment, and you're going to be, you're not going to go to the hospital, you're not going to go to the doctors because you feel better. Anti-aging therapies, by definition, their benefit is usually over many years. It's not going to get that short-term ROI.
Yeah.
So health plans are focused on things like preventing heart attacks, preventing strokes, keeping people with emphysema out of the hospital. They're not going to fund, in my opinion, regenerative therapies, with the exception of maybe something like arthritis.
Very interesting. All right, let me mix it up a little bit. Instead of asking you hot or not, I want you to tell our listeners what is. It's not exosomes.
Yeah.
Something else.
Something happened last week, so thank you. Which kind of mind-boggling. Gene editing.
All right, I'm familiar with CRISPR and that kind of
CRISPR,
story.
yeah. That's a technology that's been around, I guess, about a decade, where you can literally go in and take snippets, little cuts, and pull out pieces of DNA. And DNA, of course, tells the body what proteins to make. So there's a condition I'm sure most people at least have heard a little bit about called hemophilia.
Yep.
It's somewhat rare, but it affects young people at an early age. And they're missing a protein in the blood. And because they're missing this particular protein in the blood cells, there's clumping and folding of the blood cells. And then these abnormal clumps plug arteries, little tiny vessels in the body, usually in the bones and all, causing excruciating pain.
Yeah.
And there's some treatments for it for the episodes, but it's cycles of these crises. And just a week or two ago, a company took to the FDA a CRISPR technology to literally inject into the body modified genes using this CRISPR technology. And then these new cells produce the protein that's missing. And at least in 14 or 20 patients, it fundamentally cured the disease.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
So that answers the other question I was about to ask, which is probably a foolish one because I'm not a scientist, but I was always curious when people talk about it. A lot of times they talk about like pre-birth or at birth or before birth and that kind of stuff. And I was always curious about, could it be done like after the fact though? And it sounds like
that's starting to happen. So I think gene editing is a big idea in the future. Now, here's the thing. It will probably cost, I don't know, that we don't know because that's not on the market yet. The FDA may approve it any day. But it will undoubtedly cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. I don't know the price point yet, but it's not going to be a $1,000 treatment. It's going to be an incredibly expensive therapy.
That's too bad because I understand it's quite a painful condition. But like anything else, the more common it gets, the more widespread it does. Hopefully, those costs will
we can now sequence DNA for hundreds of dollars, where when it first came out, it was millions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the world is changing.
Yeah. And some of these research and development costs may be changing as well. Couple months ago, I guess now, we had Andrew Satz, the founder of Evolve, on the show. And he utilizes AI and machine learning to identify molecules that have high potential.
Being done
for
all
treatments.
the time now. Using AI. A few pharmaceutical companies just announced this week that they're investing more and more in AI to develop drugs. I had the pleasure to be in a kind of a think tank dinner a few weeks ago, hosted by a very famous physician. His team discovered the Omicron virus, and he hosted it on this big oil tanker that he owns that's now a cruise ship. It was converted. It's called the Gene Chaser, GENE. And they have a mobile lab with an MRI, a 3D printer, a supercomputer, all on this boat. It travels the world doing research. But at dinner, and I was one of the attendees, the big topic was AI in healthcare. This may be a pearl for your listeners. One of the venture capital partners said that as we speak, and they use the language atoms versus digits, atoms being companies that work on physical things, whether it be healthcare or, oil or whatever, real estate, versus digits being IT. 90% of investment capital today is flowing into AI. 90%.
Yeah.
That's a mind-boggling idea that it is that powerfully an exciting idea to investors that if you're not in AI, it's very hard to raise money. So for people who are thinking about what field to get into in the next few years, something related to AI is certainly a hot ticket.
Yeah, and I also think that, make no mistake, AI is going to play a very critical role in medicine.
Absolutely. Oh, 100. Well, you actually develop therapies. Personalized medicine will be AI. We're working on this, by the way, at Regenerative Medicine. So perhaps the therapy for you is we measure your blood markers, your age, your personal history, any conditions that you have. We put that into big data and we specialize the therapy for you. And Jill's therapy for her may be fundamentally maybe different.
Yeah. I
Based
think
on big data.
certainly personalized medicine is very much within reach. Well, that's just really intriguing and absolutely right when it comes to investors and AI. And the only other sector that is really kind of very attractive right now is climate tech and
Yeah,
clean tech.
yeah.
But aside from that, those are the
Those are the
very
big areas.
much the big
So I
two.
think for what I do and Jill does, the intersection of AI and healthcare is just very, very exciting.
Well, and if you can, and finally, you know, if you're out there and you're like, oh no, I'm not in climate tech or AI. If you're consumer focused and you can start printing money, there's investors for you too. And I know a couple of companies like that, not doing anything impactful whatsoever for humans or the race, but boy, they've got some.
I'll give you a great fun example. One of our board members, his name is Latham Stern, lives out in Aspen in a magnificent home. I visited, and his big invention, to your point, was the woman's scrunchie. The scrunchie that killer, and he became extreme. He had other inventions in the nautical world because he's a marine guy, marine engineer. But the big one that just was a supernova was the scrunchie. So it's not AI, it's not healthcare, it's not climate change. It was a consumer good that just was so compelling.
Oh yeah, I happen to know another product that you can't miss it. But boy, the founder has a big boat. It is that neck pillow.
Oh yeah.
I happen to know the inventor of that one. Okay. It's like so silly.
It's things like that.
If you can figure out a great business model, print money, consumer facing things where it works, people love it. That always can find investment.
I mean, what I like about, I think Jill and I and our team likes, is the good thing about healthcare is you're trying to improve lives. It's great to have a scrunchie or whatever it is, an energy drink, but what we do can fundamentally change people's lives, and that is just exciting.
Yeah.
The number one reason I went to Organicell, because what we are going to do and what we have, what exosomes are going to do, and then the proprietary products that we are developing and studying are changing lives. And these entrepreneur physicians who are just taking a complete lead and stepping out of their comfort zone to change lives. So it's a very servant career, and it's entirely meaningful.
Awesome. We're going to jump into another quick break and hear from another sponsor, and then we'll get to our most exciting segment, Plead the Fifth. It should be easy today.
Step into our state-of-the-art innovation lab and create your digital future. Oz uses cutting-edge technology and 22 years of industry knowledge to enhance customer experience through digital innovation in a variety of expertise. Oz is a leading global consulting company whose services and solutions are trusted by startup, midsize, and even Fortune 500 companies. Get to know more about Oz's Salus, a mobile solution bringing us back to max capacity, and their latest solution, Rainmaker, saving insurance companies years of work. To learn more about Oz and their exciting technologies, visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. We're here with the CEO of Organicell Regenerative Medicine for a fantastic episode. We're learning so much from Harry, but now we're going to hold his feet to the fire. Jill, you know the deal. I'm not sure if Harry does, but during this segment, you're welcome to plead the fifth one time.
Okay.
Right. That's it. You can't plead the fifth more than once, so you want to use it sparingly. sparingly, right? So I'll start off with something you referenced earlier that you had to be careful talking about,
yeah.
because I need you to plead the fifth. That's the name of the game. So you understand the fundamental underlying science when it comes to doing laboratory testings. Did you believe in Theranos' fundamental technology and ability to one day take one drop of blood and do all the stuff that we takes vials and vials of today? Did you think that could be a thing?
Well, hindsight is 2020, right? So I arrived at Walgreens in 2013, and they had already done the partnership with Theranos, and part of that was to agree to put the technology called the Edison machine, named after, of course, Thomas Edison, in 41 of our clinics, our minute clinics. They're not really minute clinics; they're called clinics at Walgreens. And so that was already in place. So I didn't evaluate whether it could be done. I came to the scene afterward. But from a scientific standpoint, it seemed too good to be true, because there are certain things you test, and I've been chief medical officer of a laboratory company, but there's certain things we know you can test with a drop of blood, like glucose, like sugar, right? It's done for diabetics.
Yeah, all the time, decades.
And there are other things that you can test with a drop of blood, but then there's some things that when you dilute it or you have a drop of blood, you just can't measure in that small a volume. So I think it's counterintuitive, but they supposedly had done tests. They supposedly had data. They supposedly had pharmaceutical companies that were investing in their technology, which, by the way, turned out to be fraudulent. They didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it was a scam, but it was a very sophisticated, well-executed scam. We've got to give them that.
Yeah, they said they had a contract with the military to use this in Afghanistan. But every time we asked to see the data, or I did, they said it's proprietary. We can't show you. We can't show you our validation data. So that's when I really I became concerned. So I think I was skeptical, but again, at the time, it was a pretty compelling story. I mean, could all of those board members and famous people have jumped on board if they hadn't seen data to prove it worked? Evidently, in retrospect, they did.
Yeah,
Elizabeth was pretty. Many people found her very charismatic. I didn't quite so, but many people did.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes way longer than those who are familiar to fall apart. Cryptocurrency is a great example.
Yeah. There are multiple documentaries on this and TV shows. There was one on HBO. The book is called Bad Blood, which was John Carreyrou, the Wall Street Journal guy, all his articles. The fictional one is the Dropout on Hulu with Amanda Seyfried, which is quite good. And Adam McKay, that did The Big Short about money, has the rights for a feature-length movie on Theranos. She's now in jail, of course. And they've already signed Jennifer Lawrence up to play Elizabeth. So here's the deal. I just want a 5-minute cameo in this movie with George Clooney playing me. That would be fun.
That's going to be expensive on the production side, so you'll have to get the producers behind that.
I'm just teasing, but it probably will be a full length movie now that she's in jail and her COO/lover's in jail too, Sunny Balwani.
Yeah, I've seen and sent many students to the doc that's on Netflix, just because it's such a wild story. They always come back and say, "I can't believe that."
Yes, I'm not going to plead the fifth. I mean, the details of how I investigated.
That's okay. We got to get to Jill. Jill's going to ask you a brutal question.
Oh, you're kind of putting me on the spot, but since I have a free reign here,
sure.
So. Harry, exosomes and regenerative medicine and that whole space we know is used for all sorts of cool therapies, one being sexual wellness.
Oh, I knew you were going to go there, Jill. I knew she was going to do this and put me on the spot.
Sexual function for women, sexual function for men.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in this space now for a little bit. Have you, or do you know anyone who has been using exosomes or regenerative therapies for
Well,
sexual function.
Well, at least one of the executives on my team has.
Okay. I thought you might plead the fifth. How about his
All right.
name?
Now we're going to see who pleads the fifth. But
right.
what's really interesting is when I talk to people about this and all the things that regenerative medicine can do, this gets a lot of attention. Both men and women right away are like, "Oh my God, I want to learn more." So I think this is part of a life, and people want to continue to enjoy this aspect of life at every age, and it's a pretty hot topic.
Yeah, I bet. All right. So Harry, you seem like a pretty entrepreneurial and innovative guy for sure. I like to think of myself as the same. I work at a massive public university. There can be some constraints and a bit of bureaucracy
Yeah.
that either slow me down or get me in trouble after the fact. So,
Sure.
what was the worst or hardest thing about working for Walgreens? I
Yeah.
imagine you ran up against some challenges
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So, and that's why I love small companies and entrepreneurship. I mean, and turnarounds. That's kind of my jam. But the exciting thing about joining Walgreens was the resources to make a difference. We had 6 million people coming into our pharmacies every day, not counting the boot stores in the UK. We had 2 million people using our app and putting together telemedicine tools and digital health tools on our app. We could touch 2 million people a day. So the lever of making a difference for 8 million people a day was very exciting. And I had a lot of resources. But to your point, oh my God, to get a decision is, 10 committee meetings and 14 approvals and, death by 1,000 cuts.
And if you're trying to do something that's new and innovative, you've already referenced this on the show. Speed is an aspect of
Right,
that. When I come up with a new idea for our
Yeah.
center and our thing, and then I know they're like, well, by 2027, I think, and then it's like, no, then all other centers are going to do it. It's not going to be new. Like, I need it now.
I think large companies who want to move fast and innovate have to create a division, a unit, a vehicle that works outside the system that can try to do innovation. And then once something's tested, bring it in house. But if you try to innovate within a big bureaucracy of a Fortune 50 company and its traditional structure, very hard.
Yeah, well, and it's funny that you mentioned that. That's a really interesting space right now, and may represent a potential funding mechanism for you. Historically, right, like in the 80s and 90s, they big corporations tried a lot of that in these kind of like skunk work
Yeah.
departments, and they tried to do it internally, but kind of at the edge of the corporation, and still
hard to
they
do.
weren't really very good at it. So what we've seen now is a transition towards CVC, corporate venture capital, where many of the largest, Florida Blue has an arm, next
They
year
do.
Energy
United
has
does
an
a lot of
arm,
this, yeah.
Microsoft, of course, has an arm. Well, they say, you know what?
We're going to outsource it.
We're not going to develop the best and the brightest, but we're going to invest in it early, and we're going to support these companies. And that seems to be much more effective.
Yeah,
Not
that's a
to
good
mention,
point.
not to mention, I know a few founders that have gone that route. It can be a really friendly route because they're investing in you not strictly, and I mean strictly and devilishly sometimes only based on ROI. VCs have portfolio to manage. ROI is what matters into the day. If you get screwed, if you get voted out, doesn't matter. Whereas the corporate VCs are investing strategically.
Right,
They
because
care
they
about
can
you.
yeah.
They care about your future products. They care
Yeah.
about the technology.
Yeah.
They see synergy. So it can be a really nice option.
We
for
actually had a fund at
entrepreneurs.
Walgreens called the Well Ventures Fund, which was just that model.
Yeah.
I don't know that we really invested enough money and time. This was going back a little ways, maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But we did try to execute that concept. So there was a whole range of companies that we did invest in.
All right. He's pretty open book, Jill.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, but that's an interesting option for Organicell, that's for sure.
Yeah.
As far as the
You
investment.
thought you'd get me on the sexual medicine one. I know you thought I'd plead the fifth on that one.
No, but I will say to your point about being the first to market, it's just rapidly changing the whole landscape of medicine. So those that autologous product and really just being first in the space is going to be mission critical for not just us, for anyone in
Well, and to
medicine.
double back on an idea with regenerative medicine, it's big. This hair is a huge issue, hair regrowth, because so many people, both men and women, lose their hair. It's not some of it's hormone related as we age, some of it's medical conditions, but there's tremendous interest in people looking, if not young, maintaining their looks and
You don't say, Harry. You don't
I
say.
have a little thinning, but so this is a huge area that we're working on, and getting FDA approval for topical things, cosmetic things, aesthetic things, where you're not injecting into the body or a joint, is an easier path to get FDA clearance on.
So that's interesting. All right, I'll ask you one more question. I don't think you'll believe the fifth, but I'm just curious. So I was working with a company that was doing just that for anti-aging, using artificial stem cell exosomes.
Okay.
Maybe. I think so. Anyways, the exosomes themselves as a topical treatment.
Sure.
So one of the big derm scientist companies at the time said, the size of those molecules, once they're basically embedded in like a cream or something you would put on your face, they didn't believe that based on molecule size, it would be able to go subcutaneous. And they thought of this as more as just another anti-aging thing on the shelf, and that if not combined with microneedling or some type of abrasion, it wouldn't be effective.
Well,
what do you think?
Well, I think I know the answer to that because this is what I do.
Great.
The answer is depending on what you're trying to achieve. So we have an equity stake in a small cosmetic company called Exotropin, and they produce a line of cosmetics called exoceuticals that contain exosomes, just what you're talking about.
Yep.
And they have scientific studies and patents that demonstrate that these cream over a period of a couple months reduces fine wrinkles because of the exosomes, increases what's called skin luminosity. That's kind of that freshness of the skin because of the collagen being rejuvenated, and increases cell turnover because you want your squamous cells on the surface of your skin to turn over. Scientific data, and we find time and time again that consumers are saying this cream makes, men and women, makes a noticeable difference in how they look. But if you're looking to get more of a regenerative, like a plastic surgery thing, then you do need to do more something like microneedling or something that would puncture the skin with lasers or microneedle. So if it's purely cosmetic, wrinkles, luminosity, fresher skin, looking more youthful, you can do that with an exosome cream in most cases.
Really?
Yes.
And what's
100%.
the name of that company again?
It's called Exotropin, and the product are called exoceuticals.
Interesting. And now
again,
for a
we've
plead
got
the
the science,
fifth.
yeah.
Are you using it?
I am.
Oh, hey.
So then
he's
the
honest.
question is, how old am I?
Yeah, and the guests don't know this, but if you're watching on video, he revealed to me before the show he actually just turned 92. So
Right.
obviously, all this stuff that he's working on is phenomenal.
Right.
And I'm 100, so
yeah. Well, it's been phenomenal having you on the show.
Oh, this is great fun.
Tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, or if they should tell their phizician about keeping an eye on Organicell, Regenerative.
Yeah, a couple things. Our website is organicell.com. That's ORGAN, Organ, ICELL. I'm happy to be reached directly if someone wants to chat about our company or entrepreneurship. Easy. It's harry@organicell.com. And those would probably be the best ways to connect.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank.
Really a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
See everybody next week.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win.